Shalom, Shalom. This is Yair Davidiy speaking from the land of Israel. Today we are about to discuss the origins of the Romans, of the ancient Romans, and also of peoples, elite rulers of European nations and other nations in our time. And we trace these peoples to the descendants of Esau. Esau in Hebrew, Esau, otherwise known as Edom. Edom was an important people in ancient times in the Bible. On the land of Edom, if you look on a map of ancient Israel, you'll see Edom, the land of Edom, located somewhat to the southeast of Judah, to the southeast of the land of Israel. In Roman times, it was known as Idumea, from the word Edom. But not only do we find Edom in that region, the sons of Esau in that region, we also find them in the Phoenician city of Tyre, ruling over a section of the city. They were important in the Phoenician Empire. We also find Edomites elsewhere, more to the north, in Turkey. And after that we find Edomites in Greece, amongst some of the cities of Greece, especially Sparta. And later in Italy, especially in Rome, they helped found the Roman Empire. They were instrumental in laying the foundations of the Roman Empire and of keeping it going. And later we find Edomites amongst the Germans, amongst the Germanic peoples, as ruling elites, especially amongst the nobility and other European nations, including Russia, including Ukraine, including Asian nations such as China and Japan. Amongst the ruling elements there too we find descendants of Esau. Historically, the Edomite peoples gave expression to themselves historically we find the Edomites giving expression to themselves in the Roman Empire. That is where they came to their full historical expression of what they were, of what they were destined to become. It is more clear that the people responsible had Edomite origins. Now, the Edomites, as we said, were descendants of Esau. Esau was the twin brother of Jacob. Jacob was otherwise known as Israel. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were the forefathers of the Israelite nation. Jacob was renamed Israel. See Genesis 32:28 and also Genesis 35:10. Esau and Jacob were twins. The mother of them, of the two twins, was Rebekah. Isaac begat Esau and Jacob from Rebekah. Before they were born, it was prophesied, see Genesis 25:24. So when her days were numbered for her to give birth, indeed there were twins in her womb. There were twins in her womb. And the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over, so they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. So, as we said, the Edomites, the Asian descendants of Esau, as well as being to the southeast of the land of Israel, that also scattered all over different portions of the Asian Middle East. In the neighbouring areas, we find them also in Turkey. One of the peoples who they gave rise to were the Spartans of Sparta. Spartans of Greece were also descended from Edom. And part of the Edomite input to Rome, to the Roman Empire, also came via Sparta. We find a reference to this in a letter to Jonathan, the Hasmonean ruler of Judah, one of the Maccabee rulers of Judah. In 145 BCE, he sent the following letter. He sent a letter to the ruler of Sparta in 145 BC. He said, Jonathan, this is written in the book of Maccabees, the first book of Maccabees, chapter 12, verse 6 onwards. Jonathan, the high priest, the national council of leaders, the priests, and the rest of the people of Judea, to our brothers in Sparta, greetings. At an earlier time, your king Arius sent a letter to our high priest Onias, stating that our two nations are related, as the attached copy shows. He goes on, and then he says, we have found a document about the Spartans and the Jews, indicating that we are related and that both our nations are descended from Abraham. So here they have a reference to a message that they had received, that Sparta had sent them, saying that they were related to Abraham. And since we understand the Spartans, the people of Sparta, to be descended from Esau, of course they were related. Esau and Jacob, even though they were enemies, even though they were adversaries one to each other, they were related. And upon occasions they had close relations with each other. They weren't always fighting. There were occasions when they cooperated, both in the Bible and in history. Spartans, according to their own legends and traditions, they say that their first king, Lelex, came from Egypt. But that could be so, but we also find that the original Edomites, when they rebelled against King Solomon, and from there they apparently spread out even more than they already had. See 2 Kings 11:14 to 42. They had been in Egypt. They had been proteges of the Egyptian king. Another tradition says that Lelex, the first king of Sparta, was the son of Poseidon, the god of the sea, and of Libya in Africa. The area of Sparta was known as Lacedaemonia in Greece. From there, a number of overseas colonies were established in Italy. We find Apulia in southern Italy. It was colonized by Spartans. We also find people known as the Sabines. The Sabines were a people who were in Italy before the Romans, so a little bit to the east, where the city of Rome was. And at first they were somewhat adversaries of the Romans, but then they made peace and settled within Rome, and eventually became Romans themselves. So the Sabines contributed to the Roman people. And Porcius Cato, already in 230 BCE, he was a former scholar in Greek tradition. He is quoted as saying that Sabines were named after Sabas. Sabas, the forefather of the Sabines. And this name Sabas is similar to that of Zephyr, a Latin pronunciation of Zephyr. Zephyr was the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esau. You see Genesis 36:11. In the Sefer Yashar, the Book of the Righteous, a collection of ancient Jewish popular legends, it attributes the founding of Rome to Zephyr, grandson of Esau, and the name Zephyr is similar to Zappos, a Latin pronunciation of the name. Another ancient Latin author, Dionysius, in about 30 BCE, he traced the Sabines, the Sabians who helped found Rome, to a group that fled from Sparta, Lacedaemonia, Greece. These Sabines were noted for their belligerence, their fighting spirit, their frugality. The Romans believed that the Sabines had these qualities from their Spartan ancestors. Plutarch, also a famous Roman writer historian, also remarks that the Sabines, who declare themselves to be a colony of the Lacedaemonians. Lacedaemonia was the area of Sparta. Other sources such as Latuda Avon or Regency Gogwas in 1801 states that the Romans owe their origins to the Albans of Latininium in Peloponnesus in southern Greece, descendants of Lacedaemonians, that is, of the Spartans, and also to the Ausonies, who also from Esau. These peoples migrated to Italy where they intermixed with the Sabines and also with the Umbrians. The Umbrians were another Asian people who were also neighbours to the Romans and became part of the Roman people. They merged with them. So we have elements from Sparta amongst the early Roman Empire. So we have elements from Sparta amongst the early Romans and helped found the Roman Empire. The first Roman Empire was Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar, 100 BC to 44 BCE. He was the first Roman Empire. He was the first Roman Emperor. And after him, the emperors took the title Caesar. Caesar was a title given to Roman Emperor, and Caesar was a title given to the Roman Emperor, and this title was in honor of Julius Caesar, the first emperor. The Comte de Gobineau, an important historian, In 1869, in History of the Ancient Persians, he traces the name Caesar to a root, case or cas, denoting royalty. And he says this name was associated with rulership monarchs throughout the ancient Middle East and also Indo-European peoples. And that, according to him, is where the name Caesar comes from an ancestral god named Kos. Kos was also the name of the god that the Edomites in Idumea worshipped. And this name Kos is actually a dialectical pronunciation of the name Esau. Esau begins with an ayin in Hebrew and Semitic languages, and this ayin could have a guttural sound and come out something like Kos. And this is the origin of the name. So the name of their god means Esau, Kos, Esau, and this was the origin of the name Caesar. And Julius Caesar apparently was descended from the Edomites, and he gave the name to the Roman emperors who came after him. And this name in turn was taken over by the Kaiser of Germany and the Tsar of Russia, because both of these peoples, both the Kaiser and the Tsar, saw themselves as continuations of the Roman Emperor, of the Roman Empire, and they took a name, they took the title, Tsar or Kaiser, as their pronunciation of the term Caesar. Now Esau, Esau's the brother of Jacob. He had been promised by his father Isaac that he would be dwell in rich, fertile areas, and that he would be a military people, a prominent military entity. Genesis 27 verse 39 says, Then Isaac his father answered and said to him, Behold, of the fatness of the earth shall be your dwelling, and of the dew of heaven from above. By your sword you shall live, and your brother you shall serve, but it shall come about when you go down, depart to the land, when the time comes for you to rule, that you will break his yoke from your neck. So by your sword you shall live. That was a promise given to Esau. This it was a promise, and that is what we find. We find the sins of Esau throughout the ancient world. Find them in a lot of different places. We can trace them according to their names, according to their titles, and of course also according to their behavior. And they were a prominent people once we are unable to trace them throughout ancient times. They were a military race of he-men hunters, as Esau was. Esau was known as a hunter. They were destined to be blessed with material prosperity and to live by the sword. And one of the things that the Spartans, ancient Spartans, are known for, practicing a form of eugenics. Weak babies were put out to die because they believed that only strong babies should be allowed to live, that only fit, healthy parents should be allowed to give birth, and so even older men therefore allowed younger, more fitter men to impregnate their wives. And this was a practice that they had. Adolf Hitler, the ruler of Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler, he praised the Spartans. He recommended in 1928 that Germany should imitate the Spartans, that they should limit the number allowed to live. He said the Spartans were once capable of such a wise measure. The subjugation of 350,000 helots by 6,000 Spartans was only possible because of the racial superiority of the Spartans. He said the Spartans had created the first racialist state, and he considered that a good thing. And he began to practice it. And the Germans practiced eugenics, and they began to kill off the impaired and those who were considered infirm and not worthy of life. Period 1939 to 1945, and about 400,000 Germans were sterilized in the period 1939-1945. They also killed a great many. Special places set up to kill the medically impaired, the unfit, those who had something wrong with them from birth, and the apparatus and the personnel and the expertise that they put together to carry out this operation were then used and to kill the Jews, to wipe out the Jews. The same people who began by killing Germans to eugenics also killed the Jews after that. And today we still have such practices in the world, everywhere in the Western world, but mainly through abortions. Doctors examine pregnant women, and when they see indications that the baby to be born has something wrong with him, they recommend abortions, whether justified or not, and so many women do have abortions. And there are cases known when the woman refused to have an abortion and the child came out okay, healthy, that the prognosis of the doctors had been mistaken. And even if they had not been mistaken, it is not justified. It is forbidden according to the law of the Bible to do this. I had a neighbour and his wife was pregnant, and they went to the doctor, and the doctor told them before the baby was born that the baby would be deaf, and he recommended that the lady carry out an abortion. And also the husband said that we'd rather have a deaf baby than a dead one. And so the baby was born, and indeed he was deaf, but they were happy with him, and they love him. And everyone is born to fulfill a task in this world. We have to recognize this. Everyone who is born is put on this earth to fulfill a task of their own, and they are given the blessings or the impairments or the virtues or the talents that they need to survive. They need to fulfill their role, each one according to what destiny has set out for him. Adolf Hitler was an admirer of the Spartans, an admirer of the ancient Greeks in general, and of the Romans. The Third Reich, the German Nazi state, was to be modelled on ancient Rome. They all said the cult of the ancient German gods and German paganism was something that Heinrich Himmler played around with, and the SS, whereas Hitler himself preferred ancient Rome and ancient Greece, and he considered them to be the models for his future empire. Hitler was not necessarily a descendant of Esau, but he took advantage of the natural inclinations the descendants of Esau and Edom have, of their natural antagonism and jealousy of the Israelite peoples, of the Jews and of the Israelites, and their distinctive antagonism towards the Israelites, towards the Hebrew peoples, and they used it for their own evil purposes. Should also note that being descended from Edom is not necessarily negative. Even in the Roman Empire, Julius Caesar was favourable to the Jewish people, who were Jews in Rome in his time, and he was favourable towards them. He protected them, and so did other Romans. Later they persecuted the Jews, later they killed the Jews, later they tried to extirpate the Jewish religion and the Jewish people. But there were periods when they were favourable towards the Jews. And so too in Germany. In Germany we had the attempt under the Third Reich to exterminate the Jewish people, and 2/3 of the Jews in Europe under German rule were exterminated. But there had been periods before then when many Germans had treated the Jews with respect and in a decent manner. So we have to be careful how we judge people, how we condemn people. The most important thing is to realize that evil exists and good exists, and we have to choose to try the side of good and do what the Lord God Almighty expects of us. Thank you.